Hello everyone, today I want to start on another IGCSE biology topic, which is the structure and the functioning of the heart. I want to name the structures as well as link them to the order and the direction of flow of the blood through that structure. So to begin with, we have the pulmonary veins, which carries the blood from the lungs towards the heart. And as you can see in this diagram, there are the right pulmonary veins and the left pulmonary veins. However, in the exam, it is much more likely that they would just put it on the left side for simplicity. And once the blood has traveled through the pulmonary veins, it travels into the left atrium. The left atrium then pumps the blood into the left ventricle. The left ventricle then pumps the blood into the aorta, and then blood will travel from the aorta to the body. You may have already inferred that this is the direction of flow of oxygenated blood, and now we will start on the deoxygenated blood, which is on the right side of the heart. So it travels into the heart from the body from the vena cava. There are two vena cava in this diagram, the inferior one and the superior one, but once again, in the exam, they'll probably just give you one vena cava. And then the blood, after it has traveled through the vena cava, it goes into the right atrium. The atrium then pumps the blood into the right ventricle, which then pumps the blood into the pulmonary artery, where the blood will flow towards the lungs. The heart is surrounded by muscle tissues in order to perform all of this blood pumping action, and an important one would be the septum, which basically just separates the oxygenated blood from the deoxygenated blood. And this is very important because these two types of blood have different pH. So the deoxygenated blood would have a lower pH because it contains carbon dioxide. So if these two blood mixed, i.e. if the septum did not exist, then the blood that travels to the body in order to provide the cells with nutrients will have a lower pH, which might interfere with the action of enzymes and things like that in the cell because it might denature the enzymes, and also because there are so many processes that are being carried out in the body every second. We need the process of transporting oxygen for respiration to be carried out at the fastest rates possible. Therefore, we cannot let the deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood mix in order to maximize the efficiency of transporting oxygen to the cells. Besides the septum, there are a few other adaptations of the heart that you might need to remember for the exams. And first of all, that is how the left ventricle has a thicker wall than the right ventricle. And this thicker muscle wall is due to the fact that the left ventricle has to pump blood in order to go to the rest of the body, which is a much greater distance than the right ventricle, which only has to pump the blood towards the lungs, which is a much smaller distance. And so the left ventricle has to pump blood at a much higher pressure and speed. Therefore, it needs a bigger wall in order to provide more force to pump the blood. Secondly, the muscle walls of the atria are much thinner than the muscle walls of the ventricles, and similarly, this is because the ventricles have to pump blood to a greater distance than the atria. As you can see, the atria only has to pump blood a very small distance from the atria to the ventricles, but the ventricles have to pump blood to other organs of the body. That is the reason why the atria have thinner muscle walls than the ventricles. Another bit of the heart that you might want to take a note of is the apex, although it is not too important in the IGCSE syllabus. Next, we have to know about the valves. The first valves you will need to learn about are the atrioventricular valves, and there's the right one and the left one. Previously on the syllabus, this has been named the tricuspid valve, and this the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve, but I think they just changed it for simplicity. And then we also have the semilunar valves, which are these valves that lead to the pulmonary arteries and the aorta. Now we have to relate the function of these one-way valves to the functioning of the rest of the heart. So first of all, when the blood is pumped from the atria into the ventricles, the atrioventricular valves will be open. But then once the blood has filled up the ventricles, then these valves will be pushed kind of upwards, if you can imagine it, so that no blood will flow back from the ventricles into the atria, so that the blood stays there. And then when the ventricles contract, once again, as the blood flows through, these valves will be open, but then once the blood has already gone through that part, these valves will close so that no blood will flow backwards from the arteries into the ventricles. And all of this is done so that the blood is ensured to flow only one way. It is worthy to keep in mind that after every contraction of each muscle of the heart, that muscle then relaxes. Just to summarize this video, I'm going to firstly summarize the functioning of the heart. Although you have to remember the structure of the heart, I won't be summarizing that because that would just be repeating the video, so I think it is much better to just look at a diagram and memorize it as opposed to me talking about it again. So yeah, I'm just going to move straight on to the functioning of the heart. So firstly, you have to remember that the blood flows away from the heart in the arteries and then returns to the heart in the veins. One way that I use to remember this is that away and artery both start with an A. So yeah, artery away from the heart. Next, the right and left atria contract in order to pump blood into the ventricles. The atrioventricular valves will open as blood flows through them, but then close once the blood is in the ventricles. The right and left ventricles contract in order to pump blood into the arteries, which are the pulmonary artery and the aorta. And the semilunar valves open as the blood flows through them, but then close once again when the blood is in the artery. Next, I'm going to summarize the adaptations of the heart. So first of all, the valves of the heart, which are one-way valves, they prevent the backflow of blood by just ensuring that the blood flows in only one direction. The septum separates the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood because of the differences in the blood pH of the two types of blood, as well as in order to maximize the efficiency of delivering oxygen and removing carbon dioxide from body cells. The left ventricle has to pump the blood to the rest of the body, so it has a thicker muscle wall than the right ventricle. And the atria has to pump blood over a smaller distance, so it has thinner muscle walls than the ventricles. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more, and if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments.